Devices, and by myself, Tom Kreuzer. I'll be presenting. First, a little bio on myself. I'm known as a PC guy because I have the personal license plate, PC guy. Yes. I no longer have the, I had it for roughly 40 years as a PC guy, and my vehicle was involved in an accident, and then it was a case of I was going, well, do I want to keep the PC guy, or is it time to get rid of it? Because the PC guy kind of identified the car possibly as having computers in it. And so I thought, well, maybe just not to have the flag there. And by that time, I have a bunch of the old plates, so I do have them in my office and different deals, the PC guy. But yeah, this is old there. And my hair isn't gray on the picture there either, you can tell. I am the son of John Kreuzer here at Carondelet. John's in front there. I retired from 3M about 8 years ago after working there for 40 years in the information technology area. I'm an officer and presenter, still present for the 3M Personal Computing Club for over 40 years. At its peak, we had 1,200 members in the club. In fact, I usually schedule these. So from 11:30 to 12:30 today, I did an online meeting with about, I think, 35 or 40 people from the PC Club. And so I'm giving, I tailored the same presentation for this group too, so I can reuse the presentations and do things there. I mentioned this, I'm thrifty, not cheap, so if there's usually a lower cost solution or freeware or a different way to do things, I usually migrate to that area. I also mention here that at Carondelet here, I do one-on-one free tech help. There are 30-minute slots from 1 to 3 p.m. on the first and the third Monday of the month. So the next one is January 6th, I believe. And you can sign up or call down to the front desk and they'll sign you up for a slot there. Yeah, I guess I've got an old date in there. I didn't update that. The next presentation, so I give these presentations once a month. The next presentation will be in January 15th, and that will be on artificial intelligence. We had one on artificial intelligence a couple of years ago, but certainly in that time a lot of things have changed. Apple has come out with a bunch of things. Microsoft has come out with a bunch of things. We'll talk about all these new things that Microsoft and Apple and Google and that have been doing the last couple of years, so that'd be interesting. Also a little plug with my brother-in-law Gary, who's up in front here, and my dad and my sister. We put on a Fix-It clinic, so if you have broken appliances, lamps, electronics, mobile devices, jewelry, we fix rosaries, just about anything there. You can bring it and we'll attempt to fix it. We can't guarantee everything, but we have a pretty good record with fixing most of the stuff. Also, if you can't make any of the meetings or want to revisit any of the meetings, I list the website on the back of the handout here. It's the Carondelet website, and in there's a section called Tech Help. You can get the calendar, which will list the upcoming Fix-It clinics, the presentations, and the one-on-one help. In the resource area, it'll have the past meetings. So I'm recording this meeting, and the handout is all available out there. So if you ever want to revisit it or send it to somebody else or do some stuff, you can do that. Okay, let's get to our main topic today, which is backing up your devices. Everybody loses data at some point in their lives. It's not a matter of if you're going to lose data, it's only a matter of when you're going to lose data. The more data that you create, the better your backup plan needs to be. And there isn't one backup plan that works for everybody. Everybody's creating different files, the importance and how much they need it backed up. You have to be the judge of all that. We'll mainly focus on the desktop or laptop backup, but you also want to consider your smartphone and your tablet devices. I'll talk a little bit about that, but not a whole lot, because most of the content creation of things is done with a laptop or a desktop there. Backup takes some planning and effort. So there isn't just one switch that you turn on and everything's taken care of for you, because again, like I said, everybody's a little bit different in what their needs are, how often things have to be backed up, how many files they've got to back up, and all these things factor into what's the best solution for you. First, we'll talk about some reasons for backup. So the main reasons for backing up is bad things happen, like the number one reason that we have loose files and have problems is user error. We delete our own files. We make changes that we didn't intend. We accidentally do stuff, but it's human error that causes a problem there. Second most popular is software bugs. None of the packages that we use is perfect. So you could be going along editing or making changes or working on some photos and suddenly they disappear or look nothing like the way that you want them to look. Another way is hardware failure. Power goes out. The drive doesn't save it correctly. So there can be hardware failure. Theft. Over the years, I've known almost about 10 people in the PC club and other friends in that that have had their condominium or apartment or house broken into and stuff stolen. And if you don't have a backup, you may have lost all your photos or your documents that you were working on or things like that. Fire. So a fire can happen at any time. A flood can happen. Viruses. I know people are concerned about viruses on their computer. There's a small chance. Obviously, these other ways you're more likely to lose data, but certainly a virus you can also lose. Death. When you die, maybe you want your files to go to friends or family or be available. You have to plan for those things. And so if you don't plan for it and suddenly somebody can't get into the computer and that's the only spot that the photos were stored on, you're out of luck. And then another one nowadays is we're doing more and more things online to these online services. Well, some of these services go out of business or change, and then suddenly you don't have access to the files or the data that you were maintaining and working on in these online services. And there can be other ways too there. If you claim that you never lost a vital file, you're lying. Everybody's lost it. It happens to everybody, no matter what your computer level, no matter how careful you try and be with your files. What are some other reasons for backing up? Well, we talked about the bad things that can happen, but there's also good reasons to back up. And some of the good reasons to back up is maybe you want to share family documents or photos or videos with other friends and family. Well, as part of your backup strategy, you can be sharing and you can move these files to other computers or whatever it is you're trying to do. Backup can kind of help you do some of that. And also you can share or sync these files or that between multiple devices. As an example, I always tell people, well, my photos and things like that, I can get at the photos from my laptop, from my desktop, from my phone, from my tablet, from anyone's computer. I can get access to my photos and share them with friends and family. Well, it takes a little planning and figuring out what service to use in order to do these things, but that can be a tremendous benefit. Another benefit is peace of mind. I know people that worry about losing data, and unfortunately that's all they do is worry. They don't come up with a plan on how to make sure that they're backed up or that they're able to do the things that they want to do. They just know that, well, they heard a friend who lost their phone or got run over by a truck and lost all their photos. Well, that can happen. If you haven't been backing up and you haven't been doing things, you can lose. You can lose part of your life there. Okay, so now that we know the reasons for backing up, let's talk about, in general, the rule. And this is a kind of an industry rule for backup, and it's called the backup rule of 3, or sometimes called the 3-2-1 rule. And what the 3-2-1 stands for is you need at least 3 copies of any data that you have. And that includes the original, a backup of the original, and a backup of the backup. So you need at least 3. The 2 in the 3-2-1 rule stands for it has to be at least on 2 different devices or web services. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. And again, I talked earlier about theft. Well, people that had an office in their apartment or in their house, thieves broke in. This person was backing data up to an external hard drive, but that was attached right to their computer. Well, the thief didn't unplug it and say, I'm going to leave this for the owner so that they can have their data and set up their new computer. No, when they stole stuff, they sold everything around there and took the backup that he had. And so he had, after the thief left, he had no backup because the thief took the backup. And then this, the 1 in the 3-2-1 stands for at least one of the backups has to be off-site, an off-site safe location. And we'll talk about some of these options as we go through here. Okay, what data do you want to back up? And excuse me, you only have to back up your current personal data and project data. Some people want to back up the entire computer. Well, the entire computer is made up of the operating system. It's made up of the software, and that can be a very large amount of data and very time-consuming and very complex and is rarely used to restore. So the only thing you have to really be concerned with is your personal data, because you can always download a new version of the operating system. You can download or get the software that you had installed. You can get all of that through other means. It's only your personal data that you are responsible to make sure that you've got it backed up. But you also don't want to be a data hoarder who keeps multiple versions or copies of every file they've ever created, because that can drive you crazy. In fact, I was sitting here just before the meeting, and a gentleman came in and he said, are there any tools that you recommend? Because he got a hard drive from his mother and it had all kinds of directories with all kinds of files in their same name, and just is there anything that can kind of consolidate it all back together? And I gave him a few little tips there, and but it's gonna take him days to go through and to clean up and do this. And so it's better if we all organize our data, don't hoard our data, don't keep these multiple versions all over, and make it easy for everybody. Data that we have it can be anything. Can be research that you've done, can be stories, can be books, can be Word document files, photos, videos, scanned documents, audio recordings, interviews, just about anything that you can create on the computer, you want to make sure that you've backed up. And especially nowadays with our phones and things like that, you have email, you have contacts, you have calendars, we have all these things that are important to our life, and we've got to make sure that everything's backed up. On a Windows device, these this data is usually stored in a directory called users, and then there's subfolders where the personal data is stored. And if you're not familiar, you usually have a C drive, and then on the C drive you have a users, and then you have a username. So if you have a family, each member of the family can have their own username in here, and then they can have their own documents and manage those and back them up that way. And that's usually where your Word files and other documents are stored there. Another thing that you may have is a music directory. And the music directory, if you're streaming your music from like Apple or from Spotify or that, chances are you don't have any personal music that you've created, or if you've taken, I have old records that I've digitized. Well, that's close to 1,500 records. Well, I want to keep those. They all have meaning to me, and I have to make sure that those are backed up and available there. Almost everybody has pictures nowadays, so you have pictures, videos. Now with the phones more sophisticated, almost everybody's got videos. You should also consider backing up other directories that are out there for things like favorites. So these are like your bookmarks and things like that, or your desktop, or if you use cloud service like OneDrive, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. What you don't have to back up is there's a directory out there called download. So if you were out at a website or in an email and you save a file, that puts it in the download. Well, if you haven't moved it out of the download to somewhere else, download is kind of considered a temporary area, and so you don't have to back up that type of file. If you do have a Macintosh or a Mac, a laptop or a desktop, you'll find similar you'll find similar folders. Their names are called Documents, Music, Pictures, and they're below the Home folder. So the differences between a Mac and a Windows are not that much different in the way that they organize and the way that you have your files. Okay, in addition to files that you may have on your laptop or your individual device, most of us are now doing things out on online sites. Well, if you're doing stuff on online sites, you want to make sure that that data is also getting backed up. So the online sites and services usually store your data up in their cloud storage, up on the internet. To get that data to back it up, you usually have to go through a process that's either called download, export, or sync to move that data to your local drive where you can then back it up on another device there. This is an example if you do anything with a Google account. Google stores all that information up on their cloud services there. They have a function, and that function is called takeout. That takeout function lets you select what data you want, and then you can download it, and you can even schedule how often that runs. I'll just take a quick look at that. We'll go out to Google Takeout. And this is what Google Takeout looks like. The website's name is takeout.google.com, but if you just Google Backup or that, you're going to see it's going to mention Google Takeout. In Google Takeout, some people, again, think that it's should be simpler, but really backup can be very complex. So in this case, Google has all these various services that you may or may not be using, but all of them may be storing parts of your data there. So if you use the Google Calendar, that's separate data, or the Google Contacts, or the Google Email. You had a question or a comment?
No, I was going to ask you answered it.
Okay, and we'll take a little bit of look at this because this usually blows people away. So this is Google Takeout here, and this is what you do if you want to back up or that. you go through here and this lists all the different services that Google has, and there's 71 services that Google has, and they vary from access log activity, you can back up that, alerts, arts and culture, you can back up that information, blogger, there's the calendar, Canvas, Chrome, it's bookmarks, it's history, other settings. So there's, and then when you back up, you can usually pick a format there. Yes?
Could you see if 432 or 434 are present here? I just delivered flowers to their doors, but they're wrapped in plastic.
432 or 434 are, is anyone here there from those rooms?
No. Thank you.
You've got a Christmas present waiting. It'll be a surprise then for them. Sure.
Just to make one of the bullet points here is online sites and services store your data in their cloud storage. What would be an example of that?
So like your email and your calendar and...
Okay, that's what you're talking about when you're... okay.
So for most people, your calendar and your email and everything is up on Google, or you may be using Microsoft, or you may be using Apple. Regardless of which of those, all that data is stored up in their cloud services. It's not all stored on my laptop, and that my laptop is just accessing that up on their servers.
It does that automatically even if you don't do anything?
It does it that way because in the old days, we used to just have one computer and it wasn't connected to the internet. And so you could store everything on that one computer. Now, most of us have a phone, you may have a tablet, you may have a desktop, you may have friends and family. You want to get your email on a different computer. Well, the only way to do that is your email and your calendar and your contacts has to be up on the internet, in the cloud, in one of these services. That way you can use your phone. I can start reading an email. I can go to my tablet. I can look up something. I can go to my laptop. I can look up something. They're all accessing this data, the same data, up on the servers, up on the cloud.
This is happening whether I do anything or not.
Correct. Yep. So there's all this data, and there's 71 different services that Google has. You can choose which are the ones to back up and what format to back up the files that it has out there in. So it's very, very powerful. So if you have a Fitbit and you're storing that information up on Google, which a lot of them are, and you want to back that up, you can back it up. If you choose that it's not that important, if I lost everything, then who cares? But you have control. Other examples of some of the services are like Ancestry.com. Does anyone do genealogy here? Or, I guess there a little bit there, okay. But if you're using a service like Ancestry or even TurboTax and you're doing it online, your data and your information is stored up in the cloud. If you want to back that up, you have to export it or download it off of the cloud to your laptop or an external drive or someplace to back it up. So all of these services, Ancestry as an example, you go to Ancestry, Tree Settings, Manage, Export Tree, and you can download that file. Yep.
So if you keep a copy locally and a copy in the file, or?
Good question. TurboTax is one of those strange packages which you can operate either way. You decide which license to buy and to use. One of the versions will load software locally on your laptop or desktop, and you operate that way. You can buy a different license to operate it up on the cloud. And basically they function the same way, they look the same way. The difference is, where is your data stored? Is your data stored locally, or is it stored up there on the cloud there? So and if you're going to use, let's say, your phone or a tablet, well, accessing it out off of the cloud can be, you don't have to have as powerful a phone or storage on the phone because everything is done up at the cloud. So there's advantages and disadvantages to each there. Okay? What to back up? I'll mention a little bit about the phones there, and this is true of tablets and phones. Android phones and tablets are set to usually back up to the Google Drive. So they're automatically backing up to the Google Drive, whether you know it or not. If you have a Samsung phone, that usually backs up to the Samsung Cloud Drive. And what it's backing up is photos and videos, text messages, call history, device settings that you have, the apps that you have loaded, some of the settings for those apps, and some of the data for those apps. Also, things like your calendar and contacts are being saved up there. Now, if you have an Apple, if you have an iPhone, same type of deal. All that information that we talked about is also stored up in the Apple iCloud. And at any time, you can go up there. So I list a few things, a few links here, and you can take a look at what's being backed up, how it's being backed up, if you ever wanted to restore anything, how you'd restore it. So Apple has detailed information on what to do. So if I wanted to take the information off of the cloud and back it up to an external drive or that, I can. And so all of these services will let you back up your data, see your data, and this is what takes up space. So as it's as it's taking your phone and doing stuff there, Apple's more than willing to take your photos and back them up to their cloud, and they give you a small amount of free space, and then they charge you for any additional space that you need, and we'll talk a little bit about that in another slide or two here. So where to back up? So you have this data, some of it's up in the cloud, some of it's on your laptop, it's all over the place. But where do you want to back this stuff up? Well, we talked about the 3-2-1 rule. You want it in multiple places and multiple formats. So you have options on where to back up this data. In the older days, when the computers first started coming up, my first computer used a cassette tape player to load programs and to back up data. That's where it was done. Then you had floppy disk drives, and then you had the little 3 1/4-inch disk drives, and then we went to people using CDs and DVDs, and I still run into people that have backups on CDs and DVDs, and I have to tell them, no, you got to get rid of those. They don't last forever. So if you do have data or pictures or information that's on these things, you have to convert them to a newer format and a newer device that you're going to be able to use a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Okay, another device to back it up to is some people will use a USB flash drive, and those are the little things that plug into your USB. They're okay if all you have is a small amount of data to back up. It's nice because they're portable. Unfortunately, they're slow, but if you don't have that many files, it's not too big a deal. But they are easy to lose. You can misplace it. You can step on it, break it. Somebody could steal it very easily. So they aren't the best way to back up there. The best way to back up is with external drives. And there you want to have 2 or more external drives. You usually want to rotate them at least monthly. Keep one at home and one at an off-site, like at work or in a fireproof safe. You want to buy the fastest drive with the fastest connection that your device supports. So all these different devices have different, if you bought it today, you'd have a different type of connection than if you bought it 2 years ago or 5 years ago. They have slower connections, less options. But if you want it to be the fastest, you can hunt around, you can get fast drives, and you can get fast connections there to do it. Nowadays, you're also having solid state drives, SSDs. These can be up to 1,000 times faster than some of the old mechanical hard drives or HDDs. Also, if you have a home network, what some people will do in a family situation is you can attach these external drives to your home network such that everybody in the house can save their information out to these drives, so they can be backing up the information out to the drives. Now, another place to back up is if you have an Amazon Prime account. Amazon Prime lets you store an unlimited number of photos at full resolution for free up on Amazon Photos. So that's an excellent place to store photos. Videos, it only lets you put 5 gigabytes of videos, which isn't that much. So I don't recommend you put videos up there, but you can use the Amazon app and you can automatically back up your photos and that to the Amazon Photos there. And if you aren't a Prime member, then you can buy space out there, but I don't recommend buying because you can see a terabyte costs you $84 a year. Well, you might as well have a Prime membership and get the TV and the shipping and all the other services that you can get with Prime. If you're kind of an amateur photographer, Adobe Lightroom is an excellent example of another photo package that people will subscribe to. That costs $120 a year, but that gives you 1 terabyte of storage where you can put, again, all your photos up there, and that can be a major backup for you. Another option is Google Photos. Google Photos, up until June of 2021, you could put an unlimited number of photos for free out there. Now, all your photos do count against your 15 gigabytes of free space, and then Google will sell you additional space out there for starting at $1.99. For videos, what I recommend people do is, again, these other places don't give you unlimited videos, but you can put unlimited videos up on YouTube for free. And you don't have to share them with anybody, so if you don't share them with anybody, that just means that you're the only person who can view it, but you can use that as your backup, and hopefully eventually you start sharing them with friends and family out there. Okay, where to back up? Well, cloud, just like we mentioned the cloud services do things, well, you can have your own cloud storage out there and use that as backup. So with this cloud storage, I know a lot of people are concerned with, before entrusting their data to the cloud, people want to know that their information is going to be safely stored. To keep data secure, cloud systems encrypt all data. So data is encrypted from the point that it leaves your computer here till it goes up to the cloud service, and it's encrypted on the cloud service such that any employee at Microsoft or Apple or at Google, if an employee there tried to look at your file, all they're going to see is 1s and 0s. They cannot see anything in the file. They don't know what's in the file there. So it is all encrypted, which I just had the discussion, like I said, I gave a presentation to the 3M Computing Club, and people were going, well, but I've heard of data breaches and they've lost this information. I said, the data breaches aren't personal information, it's companies. It's AT&T's customer database or their charge records or that. It's not cloud storage because there's never been a cloud storage. Any cloud storage has ever had any data stored or viewed that was out there. The only way somebody can view that information out there, and it's happened out on the Apple iCloud and some of these other services, is if a hacker or somebody gets a hold of your account and password. They get a hold of your account and password, then they can unencrypt the files, they can view them, they can copy them, they can do things. That's the only way that somebody can see the data that you have up there. So actually cloud storage is much safer than having anything locally on your computer. So I mentioned here, 99.9% of the people are much safer and secure having their data up in the cloud than they are having it on their desktop or on their laptop there.
So if you have failure, I mean, the cloud storage, they can be destroyed or lost?
Actually, a good question. Cloud storage is probably in the range of 100 times more secure and backed up and that than you on your device. So there's constantly backups. If I go out to Google, if I go out to Apple, I can even get a version from yesterday, or I can get a version from a week ago. You can get all of this, and the way that it's done is they have tremendous amounts of storage, tremendous amounts of computing power, which is versioning all this stuff and keeping it safe and secure. So that's where I say that you're much more protected there. The only thing that you aren't protected against is, let's say there's you have it with a small company and that small company goes out of business and you have data out there. Then if you didn't back it up yourself, you've got no recourse. Now what's the chance of that happening for an Apple or a Google or a Microsoft? Almost zero, because another thing that you have, what Microsoft has, which you don't have, is you have one drive. So this is one drive where it's stored. Apple, Microsoft, and Google use hardware that's called RAD, or it's redundancy. And that redundancy means that you have a bank of drives that's storing your file. One or two of those can fail. If they fail, you lose no data because it's repeated on these other drives. And so that's where, when I say that these other services, these cloud services, are much more sophisticated than your laptop is, and as such, the backup and the recovery and everything is you're much safer there. Okay. So this is an example of some of the cloud services. Google does sell. You get 15 gigabytes of free space. You can get more space with a Google One account. 100 gigabytes for $20 a year, or 2 terabytes for $100 a year. Microsoft, kind of a similar type of deal. You get 5 gigabytes free, 100 gigabytes for $24. But the little twist that Microsoft has is if you tend to use Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365, that gives you Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook, and their bundle of software there. You can buy that for a yearly fee of $69, and you get 1 terabyte of this online storage. Apple, you get 5 gigabytes for free, and then 50 gigabytes for $12 a year, or 2 terabytes for $120 a year. Dropbox is another popular one. You get 10 gigabytes free, 2 terabytes for $120. Okay, how to back up? Well, there's different types of backups. There's system images, and I don't recommend doing a system image. That's with the entire operating system and all the software. The average person does not need that, and you don't need to do that there. There's something that's called a full backup. That's all the data you've designated being backed up every time you run the backup. There's incremental backups, which just take the data that's been modified since the last time that you backed up. And there's differential. That just takes the data that's been modified since the last time you did a full backup. So there's all these different types of backups. If you use backup software or set up a schedule to do things, these are questions that it's going to ask you what type you want. And again, what works for you can be different than what works for somebody else, what they need. Use scheduled backups is what I recommend. The first of the month, do a full backup using rotating external off-site drives. You can do that daily or weekly. You can do incremental backups, and that way you are always getting stuff backed up. I do not recommend a backup that uses a proprietary format or compresses files. You should be able to see and copy any file or directory on any device or operating system without special software. And unfortunately, most of the backup software or backup things use proprietary formats and can only be restored on that device in that directory and things like that. I'm not a real big fan of that. This is what I use. I use a package called Coban Reflector. It used to be called Coban Backup. I've used it for over 20 years. It's free, it's fast, no proprietary format, no ads. The backups can be copied from any operating system or device. The only downside to this is earlier this year in July, the author who would maintain this program has decided to no longer make updates. And so at some point, if I can find a replacement, I'll move to a better package. But at this point, I'm still using this package, and millions of people are still using this package as their backup. Within the package, I have a task. I schedule it to run. I leave my desktop on all day, 24 hours a day. I schedule a backup to run at 1 a.m. every day. I do an incremental. It backs up everything. No encryption, no compression. Included all the directories we talked about earlier, and I exclude certain temporary files, and that's what I end up with. I use 4 external hard drives. I rotate those the first of each month between a fireproof safe and my PC, and I back up over 110,000 files, which ends up being close to 500 gigabytes of data. Depending on the drive that I'm using, these drives we mentioned earlier, some of the newer drives use newer interfaces, are faster on that. But some of the older drives, it can take 6 hours or 8 hours to copy 110,000 files. So it's not the fastest thing in the world, but again, it ensures that I have stuff backed up.
Can you just trying to follow here? So you use this Coban Reflector task. That's a program that you loaded onto your machine.
Correct.
And that is backing up things. They're still on your machine.
They're still, yes, correct.
You take the external hard drive, the 4 of them, and you use one to back up that stuff. So the Coban isn't really backing anything up, it's just put it someplace. So
yeah.
The hard drive can go, the external drive can grab it.
Yeah, the Coban, if you're familiar with, like in Windows, you have File Manager. On the Mac, you have Finder, and you can copy files and directories and things like that. That's essentially what Coban is doing, is just copying those files and directories, the ones that you've identified, the files that have changed. So if I do an incremental, it only takes the ones that have changed that day and copies them from my desktop or laptop to this external drive, and they're accumulated out on that drive. Then once a month, I swap out and put a new drive in there so that if by chance a burglar came in or there was a fire or anything like that, the most data that I lose is 1 month's worth of data.
Do you have the external hard drive always attached to your computer?
Always attached to the computer.
The
Always.
OBS thing is doing it automatically?
The Cobian wakes up at 1 a.m. in the morning and runs and copies the files that have been modified that day to the backup drive. And you can do a similar thing to these cloud services. You can schedule and you can do things that way too. So you can back up this. Now, I mentioned here when I swap out the drives once a month, it's making a complete copy of my 110,000 files. Well, that's what takes a long time. After that, during the month, I may have only changed 10 files in a day. That just takes a matter of less than 5 minutes there to copy and back up all those files. But it gives me multiple versions. It gives me these copies that are safe and things like that. That if there was a virus, if there was a fire, if there was somebody stealing, I have that backup. And so, yeah, let's go back here, I guess. The previous mentioned online services all have sync or backup settings and software. So if you don't want to do external drives yourself, you want to back it up to some of these other services, you can back it up to some of these other services. So you don't have to just use external drives. You can figure out what works the best for you. But regardless of what you're doing, you want to check that the backup logs and that everything's running okay, that you know how to restore a file if you lose a file. So you do want to test this stuff to make sure that everything's working on your computer. Windows 10 and Windows 11 do have a backup. If you go into the settings, backup, file history, you can set up a backup, but I don't recommend that because that's in a proprietary format that really only works for restoring that file back to your Windows 10 or your Windows 11 machine. Well, I want a backup that I can take to a Mac, that I can take to any machine, that I don't need special software or anything for. I don't even need Coban to get back a file because Coban just copied it. I can see the directories, I can see the files. I can take one file, I can take the whole directory, I can pick and choose what I want. If I was setting up a new computer and wanted to copy all of my documents that were in my documents directory, I just highlight my documents directory on the external drive, drag it and drop it, and all my files are going to be on my new computer or my new device. Now, I mentioned in here that unfortunately a number of people that have Macintoshes, I'd say, don't like to get into the complexity. In that case, if you don't want to get into the complexity, Apple has an excellent feature built into the operating system called Time Machine. And Time Machine is a backup utility. It does put it out in a proprietary format, but for most Mac users, that works out okay, and you can schedule the backups in Time Machine, and it's constantly backing stuff as you use the computer and things like that.
With the Time Machine, do you need to have an external drive?
Yes. Well, technically you wouldn't have to. So Time Machine, you could say, I want to back up files and I want to put them on this directory. So you could create a new directory or a new folder out on your Mac and you could back it up to that. But that wouldn't make sense because part of the thing that you want to protect against is what happens with a catastrophic failure of the drive. So you usually want it on an external drive or on a cloud service or somewhere else in case something happens to that drive. So in most cases, you wouldn't back it up to the same drive. You'd back it up to an external drive. Okay? Okay, there's some additional links out here. So if you are looking for software or some information, I list a few things there. So I've covered things pretty fast there. Questions or comments? Yeah.
So OneDrive, it's
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question because actually I had it in the PC club presentation I gave earlier. Let me see if I've got it on this. I know I deleted it off of this machine here, but Microsoft confuses the whole issue by having a directory that's on this location called OneDrive. And by default, you can create subdirectories and store files out there and stuff like that. And also by default, the files in that OneDrive directory on my laptop here are synced to my OneDrive up in the cloud. And so people will tell me, well, I have OneDrive and I'm saving my files here. Well, you're saving them to your local machine. It just happens that there's a process running, a OneDrive process that is syncing those files up to the OneDrive cloud service. And that's acceptable if that's the way that you like to operate. But what confuses people is they'll say, I need a change on my OneDrive, and it saved it out to my desktop or to my laptop here. And then they told a friend of theirs to go out to OneDrive, and they had given permission to look at the file out on OneDrive. Well, that syncing isn't instantaneous. So the system of record of the file is this local. At some point, it's going to get copied up to OneDrive, and then they'll be in sync. But if you look right away, that process of OneDrive didn't do it right away there. And that's what confuses a lot of people because they'll go, I made a change, I went out to OneDrive, I clicked on it out on OneDrive, and it hasn't been changed. Did I lose all my changes? No, it's still on your laptop. It just hasn't been synced up to the OneDrive. Yeah.
So, so does that count as one of the backups?
Yes, it can, but I don't recommend it, to tell you the truth, because if you made a mistake and let's say it's a book that you're writing and you delete 2 chapters in it, and then you're syncing it. You made a mistake and deleted the stuff. It saved it to the laptop, and then it syncs it back up there. And now both of them have lost that chapter. So technically, I'd say it's not. And what I usually tell people with this OneDrive syncing and stuff and directory, get rid of the damn thing.
Get rid of the OneDrive?
Yes, because you can uninstall OneDrive on your laptop and desktop. That, if you uninstall that, that's uninstalling the mechanism that does the sync. The mechanism that does the sync slows down your computer because it's constantly going out to OneDrive on the internet and saying, are there any new files? Has anybody saved a file or made a change? And if there is, it brings it down. And if there's any change that you've made locally on your hard drive, it's going to do that. So that's a lot of, that's a lot of overhead to do that. And I'm a simple person, and I tell people, if you don't want to be confused, turn that off, which means you can turn it off, but I recommend uninstalling it. Uninstall it, and then say, my system of record, whenever I save a file, whenever I modify a file, I go out to OneDrive. Up here on the Microsoft server, I make my change up there. Now you don't have the 2 copies that may or may not match or have a problem there.
So I don't know what if I delete it on my PC. The next time I try and get on OneDrive, it's going to say, oh, that file should be deleted. And it's going to erase it.
If you haven't made any changes, and the syncing is turned on by default, if you delete it off of your PC in that OneDrive directory, it gets deleted out on OneDrive up on the internet there. So it's constantly syncing that.
And delete the whole drive, delete OneDrive,
Yes, if you go out to your Windows settings and look at the apps or the software, you'll see there's software called OneDrive, and you can uninstall that. That doesn't mean that you can't use OneDrive up on the Microsoft server. So if you go out there, or if you use Microsoft Word on your computer and you open up your OneDrive folder, that's showing you the files up on the server. So and that's where, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that's what I kind of recommend, because you have one system of record where you're creating new files, you're putting your changes, everything's up here in one spot, and because the connections to the internet have gotten so much faster, and the servers on the other end have gotten faster, in a lot of cases you don't even notice that it is going out to the internet to load the file and do things. You know, in the old days, when you had dial-up or that, well, you wouldn't want to do it that way, because if you wanted to make one small change to a file, it might take you 5 minutes to do it. Nowadays, with the connections, it's almost as fast up on the servers as it is locally on your machine, whether it's a Mac or a Windows.
Yeah, you just got to be careful if you uninstall a OneDrive, you're not deleting anything here if the sync is still turned on.
Yeah, what Gary was saying there is you do have to be careful to first turn off the sync so that you don't lose your files. If you go and delete that whole directory and all the files on your laptop before the sync, it's going to sync and delete. Now, indirectly, it's a little bit of a hassle, because, I said, yeah, things are syncing, but you always have the capability of going back to a previous version. So if you accidentally delete something, if you know how to go out to OneDrive, and unfortunately, most people I run into don't know how to go out to OneDrive, don't know how to look at the different versions out there and pick the one to restore, but you can get it back there. But yeah, when you're first doing it, you want to be careful, especially if it's photos or things like that. All of these different packages that are doing syncing and things like that. Google Photos is an example. Google Photos by default, it's syncing. When I take a picture on my phone, it's also sending it up to Google Photos up there. Well, if I delete it on my phone, it gets deleted up there. Or if I go up there on any other device, a tablet or my desktop or that, and delete it, it's deleting it on all these other devices. So people will go, well, I don't know what happened here. Well, it's that automation that kind of took over, and you do have to be careful of what you, or understand what you're actually impacting there. Other questions, comments? And certainly if you have other questions on how to back up, or you're thinking of doing things or stuff like that, let me know and we can talk more, or stuff like that. But it's important to have, or at least understand what is going on, or what may not be going on, because some people assume that their stuff is being backed up, and here it's a case of, no, they don't have it in a OneDrive directory on their laptop, it's just sitting out in the documents area, and they just assume that it should be getting backed up. Well, that's not the way OneDrive works. So if you are going to use any of these functions to move data or to keep things in sync, you really have to know, and then it becomes that issue, like I say, of you almost have to start defining what's going to be my system of record. Where do I want to go out to create a new file? Where do I want to go out to make changes? How am I going to do this? And that way you can be assured of, okay, this is going here and this updates here, and so you can get at it. Okay? Any other questions or comments? Well, happy holidays to everybody, and take care there. Thanks for coming, and if you want to see past meetings or that, you can go out to the website there.
Is there a one-time presentation out there?
Not quite there. 1 second here.